December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. America enters the war. And just 18 days later, families across the nation gather around their Christmas trees, wondering if this will be their last peaceful holiday. The answer would terrify them. For more Christmases would pass before the guns fell silent. 4 years of rationing, separation, and sacrifice. But here's what the government didn't count on, what Hitler never understood, what no amount of enemy propaganda could predict. You cannot ration the human spirit. You cannot put joy on a stamp card. And you absolutely cannot kill Christmas. Before we dive into this incredible story of resilience, if you love untold history that reveals the extraordinary courage of ordinary people, smash that subscribe button right now. This is the kind of content they don't teach in schools, the real stories that deserve to be remembered. Let's begin. The transformation happened overnight. On December 6, 1941, American shop windows glittered with abundance. Chocolate boxes stacked high. Fresh turkeys hanging in butcher shops. Toy trains with real metal wheels. Silk stockings folded in tissue paper. Children pressed their noses against glass, dreaming of what Santa might bring. Parents saved money, planned menus, wrapped presents in elaborate paper with satin ribbons. Christmas looked exactly as it had for generations. 24 hours later, everything changed. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor didn't just sink battleships in Hawaii. It sank the American Christmas as people knew it. President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Selective Training and Service Act, and young men who'd been carving turkeys last December were now learning to fire rifles at training camps across the country. The first peacetime draft in United States history meant that by Christmas 1940 families were already setting empty places at their tables. But the real shock came in the spring of 1942. The Office of Price Administration announced rationing. Not just of rubber and metal, things people could understand were needed for tanks and planes. No, the government was rationing food. Sugar, coffee, meat, butter. The very ingredients of Christmas itself. Every American citizen, from newborn babies to grandmothers, received a ration book filled with stamps. Red stamps for meat, fish, and dairy. Blue stamps for processed goods. Each stamp represented not just food, but a sacrifice for victory. The mathematics of wartime Christmas were brutal. A typical adult received just 2 ounces of butter per week, 4 ounces of bacon and ham, 2 ounces of cheese, and 8 ounces of sugar. 8 ounces of sugar. Think about that. A single Christmas cake required a pound of sugar, 2 pounds of dried fruit, 8 eggs, and butter. Items that would consume an entire family's ration stamps for months. The traditional Christmas pudding, that centerpiece of holiday tables since Victorian times, required ingredients that simply didn't exist anymore. Dried fruits disappeared from shelves. Eggs became so scarce that Britain rationed them to 1 per person per week, if available. Faced with impossible choices, something remarkable happened. Instead of canceling Christmas, families reinvented it. The British developed mock recipes that became legendary acts of culinary defiance. Mock goose, which contained no goose at all, just potatoes layered into a casserole. Mock cream made from margarine and milk powder. Christmas cakes bulked out with breadcrumbs and grated carrot instead of sultanas and raisins. These weren't just recipes. They were declarations of war against despair. Housewives became magicians, transforming nothing into something. They saved their ration stamps for months, hoarding each precious coupon like gold. A woman might skip butter for 8 weeks to have enough for Christmas baking. A father might surrender his bacon ration so his children could have a proper Christmas breakfast. These small sacrifices multiplied across millions of households, creating a network of quiet heroism that never made the newspapers. In Britain, where rationing proved even more severe than in America, families turned to rabbits and chickens raised in backyard hutches. The government's Dig for Victory campaign meant that gardens replaced flower beds with vegetables. That Christmas carrot you found in your cake? It wasn't just filler. It represented months of labor, tending plants under blackout conditions, protecting them from bombing raids, nurturing them through harsh winters. Every ingredient had a story of persistence. The Ministry of Food published special Christmas recipes that read like challenges to make something from nothing. Eggless sponges, sugarless puddings, meatless roasts. Women's magazines filled with instructions for creating feast day meals from weekly rations. One popular recipe suggested making candy from one of your sugar rations as gifts, carefully portioning out half-pound batches to spread joy among friends and neighbors. These weren't just cooking tips. They were survival strategies for maintaining normalcy in abnormal times. Now, if you're finding this story as powerful as I am, do me a favor and hit that like button. These stories of everyday courage deserve to be shared, and your engagement helps this content reach people who need to hear it. Let's continue. Gift-giving underwent its own radical transformation. In 1941, the British Ministry of Supply issued a decree that shocked the nation. Retailers could no longer provide wrapping paper for goods. The measure aimed to conserve paper for the war effort, but it created an unexpected problem. How do you surprise someone with a gift when it can't be wrapped? Families got creative. Brown paper saved from packages. Newspaper comic sections. Scraps of fabric cut from worn-out clothes. Even these humble materials became precious. The most popular Christmas gift in 1940 wasn't jewelry or perfume. It was soap. Think about that for a moment. Soap. In peacetime, such a gift would be insulting. In wartime, it was luxury. It meant cleanliness in a world of grime and dust from bombing raids. It meant normalcy when nothing felt normal. It meant someone cared enough to use precious resources on your comfort. Handmade gifts became badges of love and ingenuity. Women unraveled old sweaters to knit new scarves for soldiers. An 11-year-old boy crafted an entire set of farm tools for his sister who joined the Women's Land Army, building each piece from scraps of wood and metal he'd collected. Royal Marines on battleships spent weeks before Christmas carving elaborate dollhouses with handmade furniture for daughters they hadn't seen in years. These gifts carried weight beyond their materials. They represented hours of labor, thought, and love poured into creation. Toy manufacturers faced their own crisis. Companies like Lionel, famous for their intricate metal trains, couldn't access steel needed for locomotives and planes. Their solution? Paper trains. Heavy-duty cardboard locomotives and cars that children could assemble themselves. The advertisements proudly proclaimed, no war materials were used. Paper dolls, puzzles, and board games surged in popularity. Families made toys from whatever they could find. Dolls sewn from old stockings and curtain scraps. Wooden toys carved from scrap lumber. Decorations fashioned from pine cones gathered in forests. Speaking of decorations, the transformation of Christmas aesthetics tells its own story. Before the war, Christmas meant abundance. Blown glass ornaments imported from Germany sparkled on trees. Tinsel made from real metal draped branches. Electric lights blazed in windows. Elaborate wreaths crowned front doors. All of this vanished almost overnight. German ornaments became casualties of patriotism. Many American families smashed their Bavarian baubles, unwilling to display anything connected to the enemy. Metal tinsel disappeared into munitions factories. Electric lights were banned entirely on the West Coast due to blackout orders. The national Christmas tree on the White House lawn remained dark from 1942 through 1944, a powerful symbol of a nation at war. But darkness couldn't extinguish creativity. Children made paper chains from painted newspapers. Families crafted ornaments from cardboard, string, and scraps of fabric. Students at Finditton Junior School in Cambridgeshire spent December afternoons creating decorations from whatever materials they could scavenge. Catherine Knight, a child in Cornwall, remembered her neighborhood's Christmas Eve party where bunting was made entirely from wallpaper scraps. These humble decorations carried more meaning than the fanciest pre-war ornaments ever could. The blackout regulations added surreal challenges. In Britain, families celebrating Christmas during the Blitz had to do so in darkness or behind thick curtains. Christmas 1940 fell in the middle of London's bombing campaign. Between September and November, the city had been bombed for 57 consecutive nights. As Christmas Eve approached, many families spent the night in air raid shelters rather than in their homes. Picture it, pulling Christmas crackers in underground bunkers, singing carols while bombs fell overhead, trying to maintain holiday cheer while wondering if your house would still be standing come morning. Yet even in shelters, Christmas persisted. Communities decorated underground spaces with makeshift ornaments. Small Christmas trees that would fit inside concrete bunkers appeared. The canteen under St. Martin in the Fields Church in London, serving those bombed out of their homes and air raid wardens working through the night, hung decorations and served what hot food they could manage. Christmas 1941 found Londoners celebrating in a brewery basement in Camden Town, determined that Hitler's bombs wouldn't steal their joy. For millions of families, the hardest part of wartime Christmas wasn't the rationing or the blackouts. It was the absence. Sons fighting in North Africa. Daughters serving as nurses in field hospitals. Husbands at sea on destroyers. Wives working in munitions factories far from home. Children evacuated to the countryside, separated from parents for safety. The empty chair at Christmas dinner hurt more than any food shortage. The military understood this pain. Families mailing packages to servicemen overseas faced strict deadlines. September 15th to October 15th to ensure delivery by Christmas. Imagine the pressure. 4 weeks to gather rationed ingredients for cookies. 4 weeks to knit socks from unraveled sweaters after working 10-hour factory shifts. 4 weeks to pour all your love into a small box that might travel 10,000 miles to reach your son in the Pacific or your husband in Europe. What went into those packages reveals everything about wartime priorities. Cookies made from hoarded sugar rations. Socks hand-knitted during lunch breaks. Candy that represented months of saved sweets coupons. These items weren't just gifts. They were physical manifestations of love, sacrifice compressed into cardboard boxes. Soldiers reported that receiving mail from home mattered almost as much as food. Those packages connected them to the world they were fighting to preserve. Hallmark cards created special designs for servicemen and women in every military branch. Their slogan captured the era perfectly: "Keep him happy with mail." Cards showed Santa dressed as a soldier, merging Christmas imagery with military reality. The Postal Service established zone codes in 1943 to help inexperienced clerks sort the overwhelming volume of holiday mail. The General Post Office issued posters warning, "Post-Christmas letters by December 20th, highlighting the strain on a system depleted by men serving overseas. Here's where the story gets even more interesting. Hit that subscribe button because what comes next shows the power of human connection in the darkest times. The American troops stationed in Britain created unexpected Christmas magic. These GIs, far from their own families, adopted British households. They arrived at doors bearing gifts that seemed miraculous to rationed families: tinned vegetables, canned meat, chocolate, real coffee. British children, who'd forgotten what candy tasted like, suddenly found themselves at parties thrown by American servicemen near their bases, complete with treats that had become legends. This cultural exchange worked both ways. American soldiers, aching for family connection, found surrogate homes with British families who'd lost sons to the war. Together they decorated trees, wrapped presents, cooked what special dishes rationing allowed, and hung stockings. These weren't charity relationships. They were genuine connections formed in shared hardship, Americans filling empty places at British tables while British families gave homesick GIs something priceless: a sense of belonging during the loneliest time of year. The British War Relief Society, an umbrella organization of American charities, shipped clothes, food, and gifts across the Atlantic. In Canning Town, East London, which had been devastated by the Blitz, children like Derek Cunningham received Christmas cards, savings stamps, and small gifts from Americans they'd never met. By 1944, the YMCA operated a scheme allowing soldiers overseas to send Christmas gifts to their families back home. Trooper Devereux, serving in Italy, arranged for a Christmas tree to be delivered to his wife and daughter. His photograph hung on that tree as they pulled crackers and tried to feel his presence. 20,000 such gifts were sent annually at a cost of £35,000, a massive sum representing the military's understanding that morale depended on maintaining family bonds. For prisoners of war, Christmas took on almost unbearable poignancy. Hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers spent the holiday season in German and Japanese camps. The Red Cross mailed packages months in advance, hoping camp officials would allow prisoners to receive extra rations, small gifts, and decorations. Whether packages arrived depended entirely on guards' temperaments. Some Allied POWs recalled the sheer joy of receiving basic provisions: food, hygiene products, tobacco. They repurposed cigarette boxes into Christmas decorations, their creativity flourishing even in captivity. They organized Christmas carol singing. In rare cases, Japanese commanders recognized how the celebrations boosted morale and work production, providing rice wine, fresh fruit, potato cakes, and duck for Christmas meals. But these mercies proved temporary. Days after Christmas, brutal conditions returned, lasting until liberation. Despite segregation policies, non-white American units found ways to celebrate. Though given fewer resources than white units, black soldiers, Native American troops, and other servicemen of color created their own Christmas traditions. They shared rationed food, made decorations from scraps, and maintained dignity in a military that refused them equality even during holiday celebrations. Their perseverance in celebrating Christmas while facing both enemy fire and their own government's discrimination represents resilience of the highest order. The BBC understood Christmas's power to unite and sustain morale. Beginning in 1939, they broadcast a special Christmas Day program featuring King George VI's speech. This became an annual ritual, families gathering around wireless radios to hear their monarch speak directly to them. Singing carols together, listening to the same programs, sharing the same scarcities created a sense of national unity. Whether you were in a London shelter or a Scottish farmhouse, a munitions factory or a countryside estate, You heard the same voice, sang the same songs, faced the same struggles. Entertainment took on new importance. With resources for gifts scarce, families relied on shared activities. Board games like Ludo surged in popularity. Pantomimes and Christmas plays continued in theaters and church halls. Communities organized concerts where soldiers and civilians sang together. Some of the most enduring Christmas songs emerged from this period. White Christmas and I'll Be Home for Christmas captured the yearning that defined wartime holidays. These songs weren't just entertainment. They were prayers set to music, expressing hopes that felt impossible yet necessary to voice. The contrast between different war Christmases reveals how hope evolved. Christmas 1941, just weeks after Pearl Harbor, still featured available food, gift items, and holiday lights. The national Christmas tree ceremony included Winston Churchill, who traveled to Washington to meet with Roosevelt after the attack. That moment represented unity, two nations joining forces against tyranny. But it was also the last bright Christmas for years. By Christmas 1942, rationing had taken full effect. By 1943, even wrapping paper had vanished. By Christmas 1944, with V-1 rockets falling from British skies and rationing tighter than ever, housewives faced their greatest challenge. Yet they persisted. Portrait photographs with seasonal greetings became acceptable gifts when nothing else could be found. People gave war bonds as presents, turning gift-giving into patriotic duty. They pickled and preserved, making chutneys and jams that could be stored and gifted. They crafted wooden dibbers for victory gardens, practical gifts that also supported food production. Then came 1945. Victory in Europe on May 8th. Victory over Japan on August 14th. The war was over. But getting millions of service members home became the next monumental challenge. In September, the military launched Operation Magic Carpet, using every available plane, train, and ship to return soldiers to American soil. As autumn turned to winter, it was renamed Operation Santa Claus, an all-out effort to reunite families for Christmas. The scenes at West Coast separation centers defied description. Traffic so snarled that the National Guard directed vehicles. GIs waiting to be processed, so close to home yet still separated. Those delayed at train stations found themselves recipients of extraordinary generosity. Strangers gave up their seats and tickets so soldiers could get home. People delivered food and gifts to vets stranded at stations. A Colorado trucker loaded 35 veterans into his vehicle and drove them across the country, delivering each man to his Midwest doorstep. A Los Angeles cab driver transported 6 returning soldiers to Chicago, 2,700 miles, accepting payment only for fuel. These acts of kindness represented something profound. After 4 years of sacrifice, of rationing and separation and fear, Americans hadn't grown hard. They'd grown more generous. They understood what mattered. Getting that soldier home to his mother mattered more than a bus ticket. Feeding that veteran at the train station mattered more than saving your own rations. The war had stripped away superficial concerns, revealing the core of human decency. Christmas 1945 became the most celebrated Christmas in American history. For the first time in years, people felt free to decorate without restraint. Blackout curtains came down. Brightly lit trees glowed in windows, town squares, and on the White House South Lawn. Families reunited. Fathers met children born while they were overseas. Wives embraced husbands they'd feared were lost. The joy was almost painful in its intensity. But not every home celebrated. Thousands of families faced empty chairs that would never be filled. The editorial published in a Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania newspaper captured this bittersweet reality perfectly. There are many families right in our own area to whom Christmas will not mean much this year. There are empty chairs that will never be filled. The battles of last year took their toll of many a gallant lad from this section. The editorial acknowledged intense suffering in Europe, acute shortages, oppression in multiple countries. It reminded Americans of their blessings while honoring those who'd paid the ultimate price for peace. This is the story they don't tell you in history class. The textbooks show you battles and generals, treaties and politicians. They don't show you the mother unraveling a sweater to knit socks for her son. They don't show you the child making ornaments from newspaper because that's all she has. They don't show you the family singing carols in a bomb shelter, pulling crackers while explosions shake the earth above them. They don't show you the stubborn, defiant, magnificent refusal to let war kill Christmas. The lesson here transcends history. It speaks to every generation facing hardship. When everything is taken from you, when resources vanish and loved ones leave and the future looks impossible, you still have choice. You can surrender to despair or you can make Christmas from nothing. You can complain about what you lack, or you can celebrate what you have. You can focus on the empty chair, or you can honor the memory of who sat there by living fully, joyfully, defiantly. The families of World War II chose joy. Not blind optimism that ignored suffering. Not fake happiness that denied pain. But genuine joy rooted in determination that darkness would not win. They understood something we've forgotten. Joy isn't dependent on circumstances. It's a decision. A practice. An act of resistance against forces that want to break your spirit. Think about what they accomplished with ration stamps that limited their food to ounces. With restrictions that banned wrapping paper and lights. With loved ones scattered across continents and oceans. With bombs falling and futures uncertain. They created Christmas. They baked cakes from grated carrots and breadcrumbs. They made gifts from trash and scraps. They sang carols in bomb shelters. They pulled crackers in canteens serving the homeless. They sent packages across 10,000 miles containing cookies made from months of saved sugar rations. This wasn't just celebrating Christmas. This was defying tyranny in the most powerful way possible. Hitler wanted to break British morale with bombing campaigns. The British responded by decorating their air raid shelters. The Japanese wanted to destroy American wool by attacking Pearl Harbor. Americans responded by making paper Christmas trains and sending 20,000 gifts to soldiers overseas. Every carol sung, every cookie baked, every handmade ornament hung on a tree was a declaration. You cannot kill our joy. You cannot ration our spirit. You cannot stamp out Christmas. The implications extend beyond World War II. They speak to anyone facing scarcity, separation, or hardship. Your circumstances don't define your celebration. Your resources don't determine your joy. The presence or absence of loved ones doesn't dictate whether Christmas happens. Christmas happens because you decide it happens. You make it from whatever you have, however little that might be. Modern complaints about Christmas seem almost embarrassing in this light. We stress about finding the perfect gift when they gave soap and were grateful. We complain about grocery costs when they survived on ounces of butter and sugar per week. We panic about decorations when they made theirs from newspaper and wallpaper scraps. We worry about family drama when they spend holidays wondering if their loved ones were alive. This isn't about minimizing modern struggles. It's about perspective. It's about remembering that the heart of Christmas isn't abundance. It's connection, creativity, resilience, love finding ways to express itself despite obstacles. The World War II generation understood this at cellular level because they had no choice. Abundance wasn't an option. Excess didn't exist. They had rations and restrictions and absence and fear. And they created Christmas anyway. Their example offers a blueprint for navigating our own hard times. When resources are limited, get creative. When loved ones are absent, honor them with celebration, not surrender. When circumstances are dark, light whatever candles you can, even if they're made from scraps. When the world feels overwhelming, control what you can. Your attitude, your effort, your refusal to let hardship steal your joy. The ration stamps couldn't kill Christmas because Christmas never depended on what the stamps could buy. It depended on the human heart's stubborn insistence on celebrating life even when death surrounded them. On making beauty from scraps. On finding light in darkness. On gathering together when everything worked to pull them apart. On believing that this suffering would end, that loved ones would return, that peace would come, that joy would triumph. And they were right. The war ended. Soldiers came home. Lights blazed again. Families reunited. But the real victory wasn't military. It was spiritual. They preserved something essential through the darkest years humanity has known. They kept Christmas alive when every force conspired to extinguish it. They proved that joy, real joy, can't be rationed, can't be bombed, can't be killed by any tyranny or hardship or loss. So as you prepare for your own Christmas, remember them. Remember the mother saving sugar stamps for months to bake one cake. Remember the child making ornaments from newspaper. Remember the soldier carrying a cookie made from his wife's rationed ingredients across half the world. Remember the family singing carols while bombs fell. Remember the cab driver who drove 2,700 miles to get 6 strangers home for Christmas. Their legacy isn't just freedom, though we owe them that. Their legacy is the lesson that joy is a choice, celebration is an act of defiance, and Christmas happens because we make it happen. No matter what you're facing, no matter what you lack, no matter who's missing from your table, you can choose joy. You can make Christmas from nothing. You can light candles in darkness. You can sing carols in shelters. You can create beauty from scraps. Because if they could do it with ration stamps limiting their food to ounces, with loved ones scattered across war zones, with bombs falling and futures uncertain, what excuse do we have? Their Christmas wasn't about what they had. It was about who they were, people who refused to let circumstances define their joy, who insisted on celebrating life even when death surrounded them, who understood that the truest gift isn't what's in the box but what's in the heart. That's the real story of Christmas during World War II. Not a story of deprivation though they endured it. Not a story of loss though they suffered it. A story of triumph. Of joy over despair. Of light over darkness. Of the human spirit's magnificent refusal to surrender to circumstances. Of Christmas persisting not because times were easy but because people were strong. Ration stamps couldn't kill joy. They never could. They never will. Because joy doesn't come from what you can buy with stamps or money or resources. It comes from decisions you make, creativity you summon, connections you maintain, and the stubborn, beautiful, defiant insistence on celebrating life no matter what tries to stop you. If this story moved you, if it changed how you think about Christmas and hardship and joy, do two things. First, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Second, leave a comment telling me what your family's Christmas traditions are, especially if they came from times of hardship. Let's keep these stories alive. Let's honor the generation that showed us how to find joy when everything conspires against it. Let's make sure we never forget that the truest Christmas isn't about abundance. It's about love, creativity, resilience, and the choice to celebrate life even when circumstances make it hard. Subscribe, like, and remember, your circumstances don't define your joy. You do. Just like they did 80 years ago when ration stamps tried and failed to kill Christmas.